Let me start out by thanking all of you for the questions. In all honesty, I think of all my talks, these have been the best questions that the audience has asked, and I think all of them are important. And I also would, because I've done this before, and none of this is research-based, it's my experience. And so my experience in offering you my experience is that part of the crowd thinks this is great, I'm going to try this. And another part of the crowd says, this is common sense. We know this. Of course we do. But you got to do it. And so it's one thing to know that it happens, but it's really hard, especially if you're in a small practice. You know, if you're in a practice and you're a doctor and you're the only doctor, you're never wrong. Because there's nobody there to criticize you. But in fact, sometimes you need to really look hard from the outside and evaluate exactly what's happening from your client's eyes. We all have to do that, including myself, which is why I rely on everybody who works for me to give input back on how we're doing with our clients. So, as much as this is common sense, you have to decide for yourself whether or not you're executing it properly. Knowledge is not enactment. You know, the biggest thing that any company will tell you, ideas, strategies, and knowledge is easy. Execution is very difficult. It's one of the biggest steps that we fail in is the execution. So, take that for what it's worth. We're going to talk about why we've had this 2 hours of discussion. Because your clients have more exposure to your staff than to you as one person. Many times you walk around subconsciously thinking it's all about me, the boss, the doctor. I have to make sure everything is going well. That's not a great strategy. I, from the beginning, really took comfort and pride in knowing that I was not the responsible person for the success of the business. And so that comes under a frame of mind. And when you have that frame of mind, your decisions tend to be wiser. So, this matters because everything we do in life, no matter what we do, is really judged by how we interact with people. I mean, if you think about someone who goes into research because they don't like people, they're not getting away from people. They have a boss, they have a manager, they have technicians. And in my book, success is defined by success in your field and success and happiness in that field. And happiness can only be had by having both of those things. And so, we talked about some of these things this morning, so I won't repeat them. But employees have the greatest contact. They do the phones, they check people in, they check people out. Nurses do things for you or your technicians. And remember, think about this as constant marketing. Because that's what it is. So what are key things to build? Because you don't do this overnight. No great soccer team is built in 1 year. I don't think. It takes experience and recognizing talent. Not just getting the talent, but getting the talent to work together. You know, there's some famous teams, or not so famous teams in the U.S. that have all this great talent, but the teams never win a championship. So hiring, firing, education, respect, empowerment, recognition, and reward are all those things to think about. If you had to take home with you one practice to make your practice better, hiring is the answer to your success. When you have the best people doing a job, the need for meetings, the need for input from you declines. It kind of works by itself. When you don't pay attention to the quality of your staff, that's the source of your problems. Almost everything we talked about today is solved by great hiring practices. Now, I can't teach you or show you how to pick the right person, but you don't necessarily have to be good at it. You need a strategy. And the strategy is not expensive, but it is time-consuming. And so for us, one of those strategies is to look for people, look for positions every day, all year long, whether you need them or not. Remember, just because you interview somebody, you don't have to hire them. But the likelihood of getting it right by always interviewing is much higher than saying, oh, I need another doctor, let me get one. So whether you need a doctor or a technician or a front desk person, always be on the lookout. I'll sometimes go to a restaurant or another business and be really impressed with somebody, and I'll offer them my card. I said, if you ever think about changing jobs and you want to work for a veterinary hospital, because what I'm looking for is attitude and personality. Training is easy. You can't teach attitude and personality. Recruiting has to be a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year thing to do. And you'll know it. It's kind of like, well, not always, but sometimes it's like dating. You know, you kind of know this is the person I want to ask out. That's how hiring should be. It shouldn't be, I need a doctor, this person's okay. I mean, you're not going to marry somebody you're okay with, I don't think, at least not initially. So why would you hire the most important asset in your company? There's no question, your employees are the most important asset that you have. And in time, you will learn how to pick the right people. But in the meantime, if you interview all the time, you'll just know it. You will just know when that right person walks in the door. We focus too much on what are your credentials, what are your abilities. You need to think more about, would I want to be friends with this person? How would my client perceive this person? Because sometimes you're still in that whole thing about it's all about us, the boss, being good at everything. We have to stop that. We have to start thinking that everybody has to be good at everything. So the simplest way that we learn how to do is just to always be looking, however you do that here, whether it's in the newspaper, whether it's in a veterinary magazine, always be looking for somebody. Even if you're going out to dinner, you know, some of your staff don't need medical training, they just need great personality. So that's important. Just as important, and much more difficult. Yeah, we got to hit myself here. What did I do? The last thing on that slide that I didn't say is always consider what you're hiring for and make sure that person will be better at it than you are. And that's true of everything, even your front desk person. Most of us as doctors would fail as a front desk person. So make sure the person you hire has great talent, great personality for that. So firing. Firing is very complicated. It's also something, as a general rule, we're terrible at in veterinary medicine. I think it's because we're basically pretty nice people. But when you kind of dissect out why we should fire, when we keep somebody on who's not doing a good job, it's almost telling your really good staff that you don't care about them. And you're spending more of your time addressing somebody who's not doing a good job, and at that same time ignoring the people that are doing a great job. There's some people, this is a little bit cold, there's some very well-known people that would tell you that every year, every manager is required to get rid of the lowest 10% of their employees in quality. The theory being that in 10 years, your top people will be your worst people, and therefore you'll be improving. I'm not suggesting that, but the concept is important. With firing comes great responsibility. It didn't take long to find out that firing the right person is a huge morale builder. I mean, it actually makes sense, but you never think about it that way. I very frequently walk around the hospital, visit other sites, and ask an employee to come into an office and we talk. And I ask them what are the biggest things that bother them. And everybody wants to get paid higher, and they certainly understand in these times that's difficult. But without doubt, one thing that comes up is it's frustrating working for a colleague who's not doing their job and getting the same paycheck as me. They won't tell you this until after you fire them. You fire the person, and 4 people come into yours and say, boy, thank God they're gone. Well, we should have done that sooner. And you say, well, why didn't you tell me? Well, I'm not going to tell them somebody's not doing a good job. It's your manager's job or your job to recognize that. One of the ways I learned to get over this is make other people do the firing. But the other thing is, someone explained to me, it's irresponsible not to fire people who are not performing. Number one, it impacts your whole company. Your job is to make sure everybody's successful. And number two, if it's solely the problem of this person, then you're not giving this person the opportunity to realize they're not in the right job. And you're delaying their ability to find out. They need to find something they enjoy doing. And the longer you keep somebody, the longer you're detaining them from finding the right situation. Because many people are unhappy with jobs because it's just a job to them and it's not what they really want to be doing. So, what are the most common reasons why employees are unhappy? Most of the time it has nothing to do with their ability to do a good job. And probably half of you won't believe this, but it's true. We're not building spaceships here to go to Mars. We're treating animals. And you're doing the hard stuff. Everybody else is doing take care of this, take care of that. The number one reason why employees don't do a good job is you've done a lousy job giving them instruction and direction of what you expect from them. We do a lousy job because the only time you talk to this employee is when they made a mistake, like my receptionist, who the other 90% of the time has done a great job. It's your fault because you didn't educate the rest of your staff to make sure this person was successful. It's probably your fault because your general demeanor wasn't conducive for your staff wanting to converse with you, finding out what the right things are to do. Knowing where are you going? You keep telling me details, do this way, do this way, but where are we going? What are you trying to accomplish here? What do you believe in? So before you fire somebody, as with me or anything, I make sure that the people who are directly under me, well, I make sure I'm doing the proper things, to make sure I'm not the reason why this person's leaving. And trust me, people have left because of me. None of us are perfect, including myself. But then I go to the next level. Are the other workers the cause for this? And if you can get to a point, honestly, to say, this person just doesn't belong in my hospital, then they have to go. The good news is you've been looking for every day for someone to replace a person. You didn't wait till this time came. So some of the reasons why we don't fire is because emotionally we find it difficult. But we also say, I can't miss a person. You can miss a person who's not doing a good job if they're not doing a good job. You shouldn't miss them at all. Whenever you fire somebody, you've done it for the right reasons, and that's why it's a lot of responsibility to do it for the right reasons. It gives you an opportunity to make your practice better by hiring somebody better. So hiring and firing really go hand in hand. And if you're not doing both, you're not going to move forward. Because it is really truly about how well we do these things, because nothing else we talked about today matters without a great team. Think about being a coach of a sports team and having, how many people on a soccer team? 11? Okay. Let's go with 11 for right now. And you had 11 worst players with attitude. How much struggle and how much input would you have to do to make that team successful if you could? But what if you had 11 of not the best athletes, but good athletes, but had passion, desire, and wanted to work with each other? A lot of your job is done for you. Same philosophy here. No different. So, education. This is easy. How many of you, with your doctors, at least once a year, do continuing education? I'm going to say probably all of you. How many spend that much time and energy on training all those people who work for you, who see your clients? The people who answer the phone, the people who see your clients at the front desk, the people who take money at the end of the visit. So, a show of hands, how many of you spend time and invest money on their education to do a better job? That's great. That education should be more than going to a lecture. That education should be part of the meetings you have with them. Talk about the phone calls that didn't go well. Ask, what is the biggest problem our client has with this situation? How do we make that better? That's all part of that education. Because to be successful in any environment, but more so in this environment, this has to happen. Just like in a play, in a team, everyone has to be successful to make that score. And right now we have a really big competitor, right? Taxes and economy. Biggest competitor we've ever had in our profession. We have to pull out all the stops. Because we can't change that. We have to hope we get smarter people running our countries to make better decisions. We could talk a whole lecture on leadership, and this is important. You don't get respect because you're the boss. And you don't get respect because you have a doctor's degree. You get respect by how you act and how you treat people. How many times have you blamed yourself for a problem at work versus finding somebody else to blame? How many times have you said, hey guys, I screwed this up, this is my fault, your mistake is because of my lack of direction, my lack of whatever. As I said this morning, the point about leadership traits are they're all traits that every one of us should have. There's really no leadership trait that I would say, you shouldn't have that, you're not a leader. And the toughest one I find in people, especially employers, is trust. Because all of us as employers have been put in situations where our trust has been threatened. But again, human nature tells me that one person does something for me to lose trust, and my human nature response is not to trust anybody in this room. As their leader, you have to trust everybody. Because the only way to get people to trust you is for you to trust them. And by the way, this isn't an outward thing. This is in our minds. And in our minds, if we have no trust for somebody, we act that way and we don't know that. But they pick up on it. Understand that you will make mistakes trusting everybody. But understand that the majority of the people that work for you need to be trusted. What drives your actions with your staff is important. You continually tell your staff, we're not making enough money, how do we make more money? Remember, They're not entrepreneurs. They're working for you to get a paycheck. But when you constantly talk to your staff, how can we treat our patients better? How can we treat our customers better? They get that. People have perceptions that they don't verbalize. I hear this all the time. Yeah, you know, my boss is always talking about money. When I make money, 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 money. Wouldn't it be nice if everything you talked about your staff is, okay, we're a really good hospital. How do we get better? What's the next best thing we can do? And if you don't come up with anything, it doesn't matter. You're building a leadership relationship that puts you on the same level as your staff, not up here. You never want to be up here. That's dictator. Okay? Doesn't work. Dictators kill people. You can't. You can only fire them, or they can only quit. Your goal is to, they're precious. You want to cultivate every employee to get to the best they can be. And don't be like that employee. Don't sit back and see how this new employee does. Be part of their success. Because they do want, I mean, day one, just like when you first walked into this room this morning, you wanted all positive stuff. And I either did a lousy job and ruined that, or I cultivated that trust and respect, and you're still hopefully listening. A new worker on day one wants to do a good job. Nobody wants to do a bad job, but things happen in your organization to cause that, and that's the most common situation. Not the fault of the employee. I don't think you have to talk about sincerity. It's important. You know, we've had, during the banking crisis in the U.S., a lot of people gave business a bad name, success a bad name, doing well was a bad thing. I mean, that's crazy. Nobody wants a loser. And if winning is done in a very ethical way, it's great. People want to work for a winning hospital. They really don't want to work for a mediocre hospital. They may stay with you because they need the money, but that doesn't encourage growth. You know, we can never expect an employee to have an employer mentality, and it's unfair to expect them to. They work 10 times harder tomorrow, they still get the same paycheck. You get more. The easiest way for us as we're doctors, we're not professional managers, but the easiest way to solve that problem is, as we said this morning, is to incorporate your staff in meetings that are productive. I can't think of a better way to do that than making sure that that happens. And it's hard at first. Since you've never let them do it, the first couple of meetings may be ones that no good ideas come from. They're not totally excited because you know what? They're not sure that you want them to do this because you haven't done it before. It takes one idea to come from an employee that you use to turn that around. So, I would say 80% of the things I talk to people about is clients leaving, employees leaving, employees quitting. This employee's not doing a good job. And especially in a small practice, this is so important because you're not buffered from anything that happens. I mean, everything's right there. It's a small building. The staff is right there. I'll tell you, this is a true story. So, about 3 years ago, I was actually pretty fed up. I was kind of done. You know, after 25 years of trying to get doctors to understand all the things that we're talking about, being a struggle in the U.S., I felt we were doing the right things. We couldn't get the message across. And my closest managers would tell me, you know, you're really kind of forgetting an attitude. I had no clue. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, I wasn't yelling, I wasn't screaming, he said, yeah, but you just can tell, you know, you had this attitude. And even though you're saying the right things, nobody's paying attention. Actually, some people's morale is really beaten down. Wasn't saying anything different. Saying all the right things. And the point is, you don't know how you are without finding out. And it's worse in a small practice, right? Because you're really close to 4 or 5 people. They're not going to tell you. The good or the bad thing about a large hospital is there's plenty of people that will tell you. And you still won't listen. So I'm trying to give you some information that's important to know, because as the client is as the rational client is less likely to tell you you're doing something wrong or your company is doing something wrong, it's true for your employees as well. And you know, and I don't know if you do exit interviews, but you should, meaning find out why somebody's leaving. And as you get wiser, you'll find out that they rarely tell you the truth. They're not going to tell you were difficult to work for. I have a situation right now. One of the nicest people that works for me. One of the most successful general practitioners in New York City, who, because as a result of 9/11, wanted to move to New Jersey, and we were very lucky to get her. Tremendous. I mean, she had the ability to be in entertainment, so she got a great personality, a bright woman. She's working on a specialty. Now, I've told you that she's got this wonderful personality. She is very difficult to have a technician stay with her. She's not nasty. And it's hard for us to explain to her that it's her lack of direction and organization that is frustrating to the technician. And the funny thing is, it's your best employees that are most negatively affected by poor communication and organization. Because bad employees don't care. They just want the paycheck. So inevitably, our impact, whatever it may be, is towards your good employee. Now, they'll come to the exit and say, oh, well, you know, it's too far to drive here. Well, you've been coming here for 6 years. Oh, you know, it's this, it's that. And so when you do exit interviews, you really have to pull this stuff out of them. And so you actually have to ask the question, well, so what do you think of Dr. So-and-so over here? Oh, yeah, he was paying that. She was paying that. You have to ask. You have to be smart enough to know that people don't leave for one reason. Ever. Unless it's a crisis. Somebody's robbing their house. And we've lost many good employees because of not recognizing that. And this is another one of those things. It's a hard thing to do, but you have to stop thinking of employees as employees. If you have something very valuable to you at home, whether it be family, children, or something that's incredibly valuable, a memento from a parent, or you would take care of it as best as you could. Right? Your most valuable thing that you have at work are these people. I don't have to tell you what to do with them if you get into that frame of mind. You know, things in life are about your frame of mind. The right frame of mind leads you down a good path and good decisions. You don't need consultants to tell you what to do, but you need people to direct things that you already know. You know, what happens to us, think about your life before work, before school. When you're an owner, which is different, you suddenly take on these issues, right? Everything we talked about. You're worried about your employees, you're worried about the prices of things. It clutters your thinking. And learn to approach all your issues and get rid of the clutter, just clear your head. There's a doctor who works for us that there was a point in time I couldn't be in the same room with this person. If I knew I had to talk to him about anything, my stress levels were, he's a horrible person. But what you find out is that going to those meetings armed with negativity, that meeting has no direction to go but downhill. Because you know, he's coming in with that same negativity. Plus, he's a brilliant guy, so he is going to have an idea now and then. Mostly about himself, but at least if one of us can come to that meeting with a totally clear mind. Now, that doesn't mean you forget history. But it does mean that you don't let the present be altered by the past. So let me explain that better. If the historical events of this negative relationship really have no relationship to what you're talking about, then you don't need to know that historical information. But if you did, you would be very slanted and not listen objectively to what that new information is. Now I'm using a very extreme example, someone I really don't want to deal with. Having learned how to deal with this, I have to tell you, I could care less if he comes to my office. And actually it's fun because he gets more frustrated because I don't. And that relationship, very slowly, is developing better. The first 3 times, he literally was screaming and walked out the door. And I was talking to him like I'm talking. It's an amazing accomplishment to be able to clear your head before you do these things. One of the things I learned that was really interesting, I always thought that being truly vested in your beliefs was a great way to be a leader. And a lot of people say, yeah, that makes sense. You really believe in this. What it does is make you blind and deaf to everything else that's out there. And you don't always have the right answers. And I might have said, I don't know if I said this and I apologize to you as a group or individually, but my participation in a meeting has gone from 80 to 70% down to 10%. Meaning my time talking at a meeting is almost non-existent. And they're the most productive meetings I've had in my entire career. And by the way, guys, 27 years in business, this is just the last 5 years. You know, so there's always time to learn and do better. You know, when we moved into this building, we were totally a different place than we were 6 years ago. Totally different. When I came out of school, veterinary medicine changed every, I'm just going to guess, a couple of years. Maybe even a decade. Veterinary medicine in the U.S. is changing every 6 months. I was elected to our state association. So it's kind of a chapter of the National Association, the ADMA. And then I wasn't president at the time, but I really argued to change the way we do business. We still have the old cumbersome system that each member was selected by their location, not by ability. So we had 18 people. It would take us 5 months to make a decision. People were making comments who had no ability to know about that topic. It was a struggle, but I changed it that people would get appointed by ability and it'd be only 5 people. We do more in one meeting than we did in 5 months. And if there was some form of expertise that we don't have, responsible people do the right thing, right? So it turned out that the 5 most responsible people were guys. Just turned out that way, no reason. And small animals, dogs and cats. So people were concerned, oh my God, what if there's like a woman crisis? What if there's a cow crisis? You call an expert and you get advice. But we can do it fast. With 5 people, we can have 100 meetings a year because we just have to conference 5 people. Now it's 3 women and 2 men. It didn't matter because we looked at skill levels. And if they're the right people, no responsible people will make decisions that they know they're not responsible to make. They'll get advice. So we did that because it is changing so fast. Our organization can change things in a month. Our hospital can do that. And we can do that because we've allowed employees to help with those changes. So when I go to meetings, my only input, and I do go to every meeting, and actually if I'm away, they'll cancel meetings because they'll want me to be there. I don't tell them what to do. I tell them what I'm telling you. I tell them over and over again. This is about the community. This is about people. This is about doing the right thing. That's motivating. And I'm not talking to them about how much money did we make. I don't care if doctors don't produce. Now I know you have a different situation here, but a lot of us pay doctors on performance. Now some would argue that doctors will do that system makes doctors do bad things. Things don't do bad things. Companies don't do bad things. People do bad things. A bad doctor will take advantage of that. But if we have a good hiring technique and a good firing technique, most of our doctors will be ethical, reasonable people, and they will do well. So when we talk, and I'll spend 5 minutes. We'll have a 2-hour meeting. I'll spend 5 minutes. And I'll just review with them what our vision is, what our philosophy is. Our client service people, is that translated? Okay. Our client service people have the ability to take something off a bill without asking the manager. The reason I did that, one of the things that I find frustrating, when I feel right or wrong that I've had a disservice, the last thing I want to know is I got to wait another 20 minutes for this person to go talk to a manager, who has to go talk to a manager, right? That's frustrating for me, so it's frustrating for my clients. Here's where it's complicated. Not difficult, but just complicated. So one's going to say, well, geez, your staff's going to give everything away. If you don't get this whole conference that I've given you, they will. Guarantee it. But when they become part of the company and they are making decisions and they know as your leader, you guys, that you want the best for your customers, not their money, they're going to make wise decisions. And in 5 years, it's happened 4 times. And think about that. As a network, we see 400, 500 clients a day. And in 5 years, in 2 years, it's happened 4 times. People don't take your... When your staff have respect and they feel they're part of the process. This is silly stuff, but it works. I'll often ask questions about what I've talked about over and over and over again. And when somebody gets it right, they're always philosophical, they're always vision questions, they get recognized. And they get money. Not a lot. They get a gift certificate. It's the recognition, which we're moving into, that's important. This is hard for us. I think for us this is very different in how we think about our business. But the world is totally changed behind our backs. Totally. Some of that change was caused by our profession. You know, I always talk about, and I apologize, I don't have the slide. It's a great slide. And let me see if my house burned down. That's all right, I can't do anything. Charles Darwin. I need participation with this. Most of us, including myself, Charles Darwin, everybody knows Charles Darwin. Right? Most people think of Charles Darwin who said survival of the fittest. Is that accurate? Most people think that? Maybe you're a lot smarter than Americans are, which I don't doubt. but most people think that. Actually, he never said that. What Charles Darwin said, and almost quote, because I can remember it. It's not the strongest that survive. So, for our sake, we can make egos strong, right? Doctors, egos, I'm one, we all have them. And it's not the smartest survive, which I was very happy to hear about. The most adaptable survive. The most adaptable survive. That's where you are today. Are you going to adapt to the world that we're in? Or you're going to let your ego say, no, I'm going to do it my way because I know better. Why would you waste a resource that you have in your staff? Recognition is so important. It doesn't cost anything. And I'm bad at it. I confess. I have to consciously, I could tell you we're very busy with 500 people, blah, blah, blah. But I was bad at it when I was at 10 people, 5 people. Not because I'm a bad person. It never crossed my mind. Which is why at the meeting I told you about, people will report who's done something really good. And you know what the best form of recognition is, in my opinion? Is walking around, looking at people's faces, and recognizing somebody's having a bad day and simply saying, hey, is everything okay at home? They might not say another word. Trust me, huge impact. Sometimes say, hey, you know what? It's just great that you're here. Thanks for choosing my company. Because even if they're just doing their job in this world, that's a bonus. And it's hard to do it, not because you don't want to do it, it's just hard to think about those things. And some of these things are so simple, so inexpensive. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you they don't want to make more money. Of course they do. But that alone doesn't make them happy. And if they're not happy, you're not running a good business. If you're not running a good business, you're not going to optimize your revenues. It really is about all the people playing together on the same team to their maximum. There isn't one famous CEO that will not tell you that they hire 90% on attitude and personality and 10% on ability. I'm sure there's different ranges in there, but you get the idea. I love driving, but I know nothing about fixing cars. So when I have to get my car fixed, I totally judge that place by my service. I had a situation with a car that had to be fixed 7 times. But that company made sure that I lost no time. I wasn't affected in any way. And it was a nice vehicle, and it took months. And I did understand that it was a complicated problem. The point was, I didn't have to go there. They picked up my car, they dropped off the car. And when it was done, it turns out there was actually a Range Rover, and there was a defect in all the Range Rovers with this particular motor that was hard to diagnose, and they actually had to go back and fix many of them. You know what they did? They didn't give me any money back. They made a donation to my cancer camp, $3,000. Now, I'm not suggesting you give $3,000 away, but the point is they understand to make my life easy, because I literally would have said, I'm not coming back, and they would have lost their client forever. So, recognize your staff, make them happy, and you probably do this already, but I just want to tell you, if you take them out once in a while for dinner, if you don't do it, big impact. Does cost something, but it just shows you kind of care about them other than just doing their job. We already talked about this. I truly believe this, which is why I think I'm very successful. What it says is, you can judge success when your company runs better or as good without you. And it runs better. That's why they were glad I came to Spain, because they can actually get their work done now. It's kind of funny, but I also think it's kind of true. If you can go home and go away and sleep well and know that you trust your employees to run your company, that's your test. Because if you can't, I will tell you 100% is your fault. Your fault. It's not the one who works in the back, the one who works in the front, the one who works in the operating room. Your fault. And whether it's your fault because you don't know how to hire, you don't know how to fire, you don't know how to empower your staff. You know, sometimes when I first heard that word, I thought it means give them things to do. Okay, you're in charge of X, Y, Z. Empowerment means making them feel like they're part of the progression and the growth of the hospital, not maintaining the hospital. Make them feel that they are being heard and you're using their information. And none of these things can be looked at, and I apologize, but I'm not going to tell you if you do this, you're going to make 20% more in a month. But I guarantee you that no matter what, you'll have a better place to work. There's just no way you're not going to produce better revenues by accomplishing that.